Hello and welcome back to All Things Money. I'm your host, David Blain, and during this segment we're going to start talking about the economy, some general economic principles. How does the economy work? I'm going to try to boil it down into simple, easy to understand things. I don't know that we'll finish today. Maybe we'll carry this on into next week and beyond, and we'll use simple, easy to understand things like Monopoly. I mean, the game of Monopoly is actually a beautiful example of how economies work. If hopefully a lot of you out there have played Monopoly. If you don't, then it's not going to make much sense. But those of you who have played Monopoly and you get, some money to start with, and you go around the board and you try to buy houses and then build hotels, and then people land on your squares that you own. They have to pay you rent. And there's a banker that changes money, and it's a very realistic example where you can see how cash flow is king and how you have to balance spending your money to buy hotels and houses and build on your property versus if you accidentally land on somebody that's got a hotel, you got to have enough money to be able to pay it. And so it's a great game for learning how the economy works. And I was thinking the other day that I had to come up with a new Monopoly game that's like our real economy, where you had like a central bank that could actually loan money. You could loan money to the players, and take it one step further, like our central banks, is you could actually create money out of thin air and print more money for the game. But anyway, maybe we'll do that some other day. Okay, so let's talk about the economy. What is an economy? An economy in its most basic form is a sum of all the transactions that take place within an economy. So if you're talking about, say, the U.S. economy, the U.S. economy is the sum of every transaction that takes place. And before we get into this, just think about what I said. And so when you see that the GDP went up or down or this, that trade deficit, that if you think that that is an actual accurate number, you're missing the point. Remember what I said, the economy is the sum of every transaction. Every transaction where a buyer gives money or credit over to a seller for a good or service or financial asset is a transaction. And the economy is the summation of every one of those transactions. So once again, a transaction, for my purposes, is when a buyer gives money, cash, or credit card or a loan from the bank, to a seller for a good, service, or financial asset. And so that's what an economy is. Well, to kind of break it down, then you have markets. Of course, the famous one, the stock market. You have commodities markets. You have the food market. You go down to the market. I mostly call grocery stores. It used to be called the market. And so a market is a little economy of similar items. So a stock market is where you buy and sell financial instruments called stocks. The commodities market is where you buy and sell gold. So these markets in aggregate make up the economy, and each market is made up of all the transactions within that market. So you can see that we have a sort of a building block of down at the minute level. When you go into the McDonald's for lunch and you buy a Big Mac meal, you're a buyer, McDonald's is the seller, and that transaction is part of the fast food market, so to speak, which is one segment of the overall economy. And so it just kind of builds up. And you have different reasons for the buyers and sellers in the market. Okay, so the market, the total market or the total economy is equal to the total money and credit spent and the total quantity provided. And that's all you need to know about the economy, is the total money and credit spent and the total quantity provided. And so that's what determines the price. If you have the total money spent divided by the total quantity of whatever was provided, and you divide that, it equals the price that was paid for those items. And so that's the basic what you need to know about the economy. Of course, Buyers and sellers have different reasons for entering into transactions. You have, buyers in the financial markets looking to make money. You also have buyers in the financial markets looking to hedge. Airlines hedging the price of oil, farmers hedging the price of corn. Same thing with sellers. You have sellers looking to cash out and pay for living expenses, or some people cash out of the markets to go buy a home or pay for college. So you have different motivations for both the buyers and the sellers. And so in aggregate, the sum of all these different reasons for buying and selling makes up the economy. Now this description that I'm going through is slightly different than your traditional supply and demand curves which set the price. We want to make this a little bit more simple. Number one, to explain it over the radio and the TV without the benefit of graphs. But just remember, we're not going to be talking a lot about supply and demand curves, but rather this notion of the total money spent in an economy coming from cash and credit, and the total quantity of goods or services provided. So like I said, money comes either from actual cash that people have to spend or credit, a credit card, taking a loan from the bank. Credit meaning a promise to pay money back in the future. That can be any sort of credit. All right, well, we're coming up on our second break. When we come back, we'll continue talking about the economy and sort of the building blocks of how things work and set prices in the marketplace. So for All Things Money, I'm your host, David Blain. We'll be right back after a few short messages.